Erica Bonham. Really, really enjoyed my conversation with Erica. Trauma. Why work with it? We started talking, and I asked her to define trauma, and she defined it as kind of large and small. I wonder if you've ever considered it that way. What's more common to deal with, what's less difficult to deal with, and why devote your time and energy to being a therapist that helps people with trauma? It takes a special kind of individual. We all have some kind of trauma. But do we need help? Do we go to a professional therapist like Erica? Just a great conversation. I opened up the conversation with yoga, how it's important in her life. She's also an author, but just great insight on what trauma is, how to deal with it, when to seek help. Very introspective conversation with Erica. I really, really enjoyed it. God, I can't tell you how much I love doing these conversations. Speaking to somebody like Erica, it's so fulfilling. It's just really, really great to speak to somebody who's doing such good and has that perspective. Thanks so much for listening and watching. Hi, I'm Joey Pinz, and here's my 45-second introduction. After starting my business in the 90s, I started developing poor habits of eating in my diet because I was working way too much. Before you know it, I found myself 340 pounds. The doctor told me if I don't lose the weight, I'm not going to see my daughter graduate. Took the next 7 months, lost 130 pounds. People think there's some secret. Ask me, how'd you lose that weight? Like there's some secret. There is no secret. How'd I lose the weight? Just one word: discipline. I've had other successes in life, and I attribute them all to discipline. Now, I'm not the king of discipline, but I believe that it can help all of us. Friends, colleagues convinced me to start a podcast. The podcast mission: how do we better ourselves and society? I talk to interesting people in health, fitness, sport, wellness, business, technology, science, art, and culture. And I eventually ask them how discipline plays a role in their life. Podcast vision: growth through learning from others. Well, fantastic, Erica Bonham. I thank you so much for your time. Tell me what the role of yoga plays in your life.
Oh, okay. Yoga. Right now I have a torn ACL, so it does not play a role in my life right now at all. But generally speaking, yoga is part of how I keep my nervous system regulated.
Right.
And so, that's what I do in my career. And so it's just part of toning my vagus nerve. It's part of finding my center point, finding my anchor point so that I can show up in the most fullest expression, right? In the aligned way.
So when you're injured like this, Erica, do you replace it with meditation? How do you stay anchored?
Yeah. It's hard. Luckily with a torn ACL, I'm pretty mobile, but I just can't lunge or do a lot of the poses.
Right.
So, luckily I'm still able to, do some light squats, do some of like my, my physical therapy exercises. Those are less satisfying for sure. But yeah, meditation, I do a lot of like steam room, sauna kind of things, but even just basic nervous system regulation exercises like twisting or pushing against a wall, or there's the polyvagal reset exercise, even just like shaking it out, right? Just like, can help me. And of course, deep breaths and meditation and walking. Like, luckily I'm able to walk. And then I'll hit the big reset button in December when I have my surgery.
That's what it is. Yeah. Because, you work with trauma, so you need some kind of outlet, Erica, right? Otherwise you're going to carry it all.
Oh yeah. And I think most therapists, no matter how good emotional boundaries we have, we're going to absorb it, because if we're not, there's empathy there. And so even if you have amazing emotional boundaries, even if you have a good self-care routine, your body's going to take some of it on. Yeah. So yeah, you definitely, I have my maybe a little woo-woo thing that I do at the end of every day. I kind of shake everything out and I wipe everything off, and I put my hands on my little salt lamp, and I'm like, I consciously release any energy that is not mine. And I just kind of like move it through. And then I try to take a few deep breaths. That's like, okay, this chapter of the day is closed. My role as a therapist is done now. And now I'm kind of putting on my
Mm.
partner hat. I'm putting on my
Mm.
mom hat. I'm putting on my, like, I'm going to walk and take care of myself hat. So I think having some sort of container um, that, that ends, like bookends that
Right.
time is really important for me. Yeah.
I work from home. I'm not sure if you do or not. And sometimes I want to try to separate because it's good that I don't have to commute anywhere, but it's bad that I don't have to commute anywhere. I mean, it's just
Totally.
I end up in downtime, just end up working. So I had this plan where I was gonna like light a candle every time that I'm off work, and I would do it, and then I would just forget, and it would just kind of float away. It's very tough to make that separation, but you have to work at it.
Yeah. In the pandemic, I was actually really grateful that, I was still obviously doing telehealth, but I was still coming to the office. And for me, it was really important to have that demarcation.
Mm,
But I think for people working from home, whatever you can do to just build, I'm sure you're familiar with momentum instead of motivation, right? Just whatever you can do to just point your feet in the direction of that demarcation. And maybe you don't need it, but usually, or like, just changing your clothes or doing something to sort of bookend
hmm,
that, because I think there's something that happens in the brain, right? That's like, I'm shifting now. That time is over. Otherwise,
mm,
it bleeds together,
it
right?
does.
I mean, I don't work from home, but just being, uh, you know, having my own business, it feels like I have to be available all the time,
Right,
right? It
right.
feels like email is always like,
Mm.
if I don't answer it right away, I'm going to miss it or something. So that's my sort of next layer of discipline for me, and demarcation for me, is to really try to bookend my technology time.
Mm. Yeah, because the tech keeps us so close, and it's good and bad. Again, the same thing
Right.
where you feel like, you could be missing out. Does astrology play a role in your life at all?
Yeah, I
Excuse me.
always think of things as lenses, right? Like, I put different lenses on things, and astrology might be one lens. And if it doesn't resonate for people, fine. But
Mm,
I do think that it's a lens that helps, that can, we can see ourselves in maybe a different way through. Same with like Enneagram, right? Or Myers-Briggs, or
mm,
personality tests, or any kind of spirituality lens. It might just help us have this, you know this perspective, this like glasses that we
mm.
could see ourselves through. And I've had my chart read a couple of different times, and I've certainly gotten something out of it,
Good.
regardless of whatever. It was still very helpful for me to point to, oh, this is where you might not have quote unquote planetary support. And it feels true
Mm.
for me, right? Like, it so mine was, I'm really very good at what I do. Like, I'm sort of like priestess in the spiritual world. I'm very good at relationships, but I'm really crap at like CEO business or
Ah,
organization stuff. So I need to hire people to do that. And, you know, regardless of whether or not any of that holds scientific water or whatever, it was a helpful lens for me to see that through. And, for me, it does resonate. It makes sense to me that our bodies are connected to every other living thing on the planet, including stars and planets, right? And things like that. And I have a son that is very, very scientific. He's like, that is just crap and woo
ha.
woo and all of that. And I respect his path, right? Like, I don't find it helpful to force any one way onto folks, right?
Mm. Yeah, staying open-minded. When one of the AI engines recently came out with a new version, there was a whole horoscope astrology edition, and so I found myself going down a rabbit hole for about 2 hours. And I tell you about, I don't know, 70%. The 70% it got right, it got really right. So much so that I was like, whoa, what? I've never looked at my. It isn't. So I guess they're like you say, it's another lens, and people can choose to pursue it if they want. But it's just interesting to get that perspective.
Yeah, right. And, and I'm I'm a both and multiple perspectives type of person. And something that I talk about a lot is unhealed, trauma organized nervous systems tend to be very stuck in binary, right? Good, bad, safe, not safe, right, wrong. And, when we're being jackknifed on a highway, that's actually a good thing, right? You don't want nuanced thinking online. You want good, bad, safe, not safe, get off the road. But when we are in most other areas in our life, when we're talking to our partners, when we're thinking about our self-care routine, our community care routine, a more nuanced approach of being able to handle and hold multiple perspectives, hold seemingly opposite truths, is really helpful and beneficial. Being able to jump into the other person's perspective and being able to attune to that and to attune to ourselves. Like if we're struggling with our discipline routine, to just pause and be like, what is the block here? Can I greet that with compassion and still point my feet in the direction of it, right? So how do we hold compassion and boundaries for ourselves and other people? How do we hold, the world is brutal and tiny, beautiful things happen every day, right? How do we hold this person really activates me, or their perspective feels really harmful? And how do I, move past what I'm fighting against into what I'm fighting for, and what do I want to create, instead of just being like stuck in activation all the time.
Erica, define trauma, please.
Mm-hmm. Well, okay, so I think there's two kind of major things that I talk about, or us trauma people in the biz talk about. And one is the big T trauma, right? Big T is what most people consider to be traumatic: abuse, war, witnessing violence, almost getting killed, a very severe car accident, growing up in a violent household, emotional abuse, things like that, right? Most of us would agree that those events are traumatic. And, what we often differentiate is trauma in the body is not necessarily what happened, but it's the systems and the patterns that get stuck and stored in the body as a result of what happened. Humans that can actually survive horrible things. But if in the moment there is a caring and regulated person that's like, wow, that was really scary. Tell me how where is that in your body? And that can help you actually digest and process it. You're much less likely to develop PTSD, right? That experience can really be digested and alchemized and composted. But most of the time it doesn't get processed. It gets stuck and stored. And that kind of leads to little T trauma, right? Little T trauma is those seemingly innocuous death by 1,000 paper cuts, right? Where maybe we had a caregiver that was physically present, but was really emotionally checked out and was never really able to just be attuned to us, right? Or we moved a lot, right? Our physical safety wasn't ever in danger, but our sense of autonomy was taken away. And again, if you're moving a lot and your parents like, hey, I know it's really hard to start over at a new school, and how can we help you transition? If they're naming that, if they're helping you and coaching you through that, then it could be okay, right? But if they're just like, buck up, buttercup, we're moving again. Too bad, so sad. Pack up your stuff. Let's go. And there's no recognition of the wounding, then that gets stuck and stored. And we develop patterns and parts. We'll develop people-pleasing parts, or we'll develop over-responsibility parts, or we'll develop bullying parts, right? We'll develop lashing out parts or rageful parts. And those are trying to get our needs met, get our need for power met, or get our need for connection and belonging met. So trauma, again, there's big T trauma, but there's death by 1,000 paper cuts, attachment trauma. And I think most of us have some sort of undigested wounding. And maybe we can think of trauma on a continuum, right? That it could be grief, it could be wounding that never got digested. And then we can work up to the big the big traumatic events, because I think it's important to differentiate that there's capital T trauma and little t trauma, and not to conflate those two.
Hmm. And when you work with people, is it mostly for the big trauma?
Yes. And most of the time when there's big T trauma, there's also little t trauma.
I see.
Right. And sometimes that's the hardest thing to process. So, I use a therapy called EMDR therapy. It's a ridiculous acronym. I wish she would have called it something different. It stands for eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. And really you can hold paddles, you can move your eyes back and forth, but honestly, like drumming is a bilateral stimulation, right, left. Yoga is a bilateral stimulation, right, left. And what we think happens in that is it mimics REM sleep, and the bilateral stimulation and taxing the working memory, lighting up how the memory is currently stored, helps to get the right and the left brain to process more, and helps the bottom brain and the top brain process more and communicate more effectively. So when I'm doing EMDR is really, really helpful for this single incident trauma, right? Like if you have a big T trauma, there's an event, something happened. You can point to it. You're like, this thing happened. It's tangible. But when it's little T trauma, sometimes it's what didn't happen, right? Sometimes it's like the nothing, where you were reaching out for someone and nothing happened, or you were hoping that a caregiver would, meet you where you are or pick you up or whatever, and that didn't happen. And so you shut down and you learned to dissociate. And that, death by 1,000 paper cuts is much harder, because you're like, which paper cut do we target? Right. And so it's much more abyss-like. It's much more nonlinear. It's just messier. And humans are complicated and messy. And so oftentimes when there's big T trauma, there's also little t trauma underneath it.
I had an uncle, Erica, who was in Vietnam, and whenever I asked him about it, he just kind of shook his head, no.
Right, right.
Lit up a cigarette, or drank some whiskey. I mean, I wanted to know, and I would ask him. I didn't want to press too hard, but when we know a loved one or a family member or a friend's gone through trauma, do we bring it up? Do we avoid it? What do we do there?
Oh gosh, it's so hard. I mean, I think getting consent from people is so important, right? To say, I really want to, is there anything that I could do to make you feel safe enough to open up to me about it? I want to respect your boundaries. I want to respect your capacity. I want to respect what you do and what you don't want to talk about. And I just want you to know that I'm here if you ever want to talk about it. Right. And I think it's nuanced. I think you have to read the room. You have to read the person. You have to read what the other person's body is saying. And even, just checking it out with them, like, hey, you went really quiet. Did I lose you? Or, hey, what happened there? I don't want to push. And I just want you to know that I want to be a safe person for you. And, I think my role as a parent, right, is very different. I can say things to my clients that I cannot say to my partner. Right. I cannot say to my kids. So when people are in my office, I get to maybe be more relentlessly inviting to talk about things, right, than I do with my kids. I have to really, practice different boundaries, practice different ways of relating. Because if I push too hard, they'll shut down, right? Or if I'm giving perspective too quickly, right? Like, if I'm like, well, think about it this way too quickly, that shuts it down. And so, yeah, I think getting consent, I think the reservoir that you build with people over time is the thing that's going to tell them whether or not you're the one that gets that vulnerable information.
And if we have friends or loved ones that act that way, when should we consider bringing somebody in like you?
Well, again, I mean, you can't force anything, right?
Right.
I mean, of course, partners will be like, if something doesn't change, you got to go to therapy or I'm out
Right.
of here.
Ultimatum.
Yeah, but or court ordered folks.
Ah.
That's not my lane. I'm here on this planet to go down and in and deep with people that are choosing that, right?
Hmm.
Um, but I'm really grateful for folks that are willing to be the front door, be the first person that maybe somebody who doesn't necessarily want to go to therapy,
Hmm.
um, they create enough safety for them to at least dip their toes into the work, right? And it's tricky, but yeah, I mean, I think if you are if you're seeing somebody that you love and their unhealed crap is leaking out and rupturing the relationship or causing harm to you or causing harm to their kids, it can be really tender of
Hmm.
how we approach that. And the thing that I'm really aware of is um, what I call congruence. So a lot of times, I think, especially for women, and again, I'm painting with broad brush strokes here, right? But women will try to do the nice thing, like, "Hey, I, I don't want to like they're tiptoeing around it, and but really they're like mad, or really they're scared,
Hmm.
and their body is communicating control or communicating something different than what their nicey nice words are saying, right? Whereas men might come in and like, this is what you need to do, try to fix it, and like,
Hmm. Hmm.
I'm gonna tell you what you need to do, and maybe a blend of the. But I think if people can tell that you are congruent, if people can tell that your nervous system is steady and that you are coming with an open heart and that you are wanting to understand their experience, they can feel that.
Hmm.
And so when you are pushing on something, or when you are saying like, hey, I have some hard feedback, and I, you know, this might be hard for you to hear, but your shit is leaking out
Hmm. Hmm.
and it's causing harm to your relationships. And I'm really wanting to invite you to find the thing that's going to help. And if you want my help doing it, I'm here. Right. And that feels different than, hey, I don't want to,
Hmm.
I don't
Hmm.
want to like pressure you or anything, but maybe you could consider therapy. Like
Hmm.
that's just not a clean a request, right? People can feel the incongruence there.
I have daughters, Erica, and I always wonder, I've been an athlete all my life, and I always wondered if I had sons, how a different father I would be. I mean, I'm sure because I coach too, and I'm sure I would be more demanding and just a bit more masculine. I don't know what the term is, but I was just but with girls, I love them so much, and I wouldn't want it any other way. But it would just when I coach them as well, it just things are just done just a little bit differently, and in my opinion, better, by the way. But so
Right.
I guess does that go along with what you're saying? And that like when you're talking to people, when you're treating them, I guess I'm not quite sure what my point is, but we have to meet people where they are.
That's right. Yeah. So when I work, again, broad brush strokes here, right? But when I'm working with men and especially, or women too, like if I'm working with a part of them that is very armored, right? That is
Mm,
very protective,
mm,
like a spiky leather jacket part or
mm,
like a very tough part. I am going to try to greet that. If I try to get in there with an overly smushy, overly nurturing, like,
mm.
oh, there must be really a lot of pain underneath there, that is not going to land well. Right. Um, I'm thinking of like, I can't remember, I heard this story, but it was like a doctor And they were saying, a lot of times I try to meet my clients in this really loving way, but when I'm working with like a 60-year-old man, sometimes I just need to be like, you need to sit down and shut up and listen
Wow.
to what I'm saying.
Wow. Wow.
Right. So there's like an authority there, or like a stepping into your power, but you're still communicating care, right? You're still communicating resonance and attunement. But I need to be like, the way I show up, depending on what's in front of me, I'm still authentic, but I shift my energy a little bit, right? To meet somebody, to like be able to, for them to to experience me as caring, but also like caring doesn't mean that I'm just a pushover either. And I think, if I'm working with a very armored man, I'm going to be, I'm going to make sure that I'm sitting up straight. I'm going to make sure that I'm, finding my own anchor point and trying to own my seat of like, listen, my friend, I understand, my voice, my timbre, my whole energy is going to be a little different than when I'm working with a very hypersensitive person that needs a lot more of a tender touch. I absolutely think there are parts underneath strong armored parts that probably need more tender of a touch, but we're not going to get there if we don't work with what's in front of us first.
I'm at an age now where I don't play a lot of team sports anymore. I play some golf, and when I'm partnering with people that I know what motivates them because I've known them for so long. Some guys you got to give fist bumps to. Some guys you got to keep a little light. Some guys you got to stay focused. Everybody's just different. I mean, when you're meeting with someone for the first time, Erica, you've got a blank slate there. How do you know how to work with them? You probably read a little bit about them, but how do you know what motivates them? It must be tough.
Well, I genuinely care about people. I think that people feel that, right? That really is, I hope people experience that. I'm not everybody's cup of tea, but I hope people experience me as being congruent, as being authentic, and people can feel it, right? People have a bullshit meter, especially people who have trauma have a very good bullshit meter. They can tell if you are faking it, or if you're performing care or performing calm or performing, and so I think working on our own stuff, working on our own, digesting our own wounds, like sometimes our wounds show up as martyry, rescuey people. I think a lot of therapists have this, right? Where we have our own stuff and then we're like, I know what I'll do. I'll become a therapist and I'll help everybody else fix their problems.
Wow.
And if we're working from that place, you still might be able to do some good work, but I think people can tell, and we can only take people as deep and as far as we've gone ourselves. And so the work that I have done on myself, I hope, and I believe that this is a lifelong process, that this is an emergent process. There's no healing land. There's no arriving, right? But I think that people can hopefully tell that I have done the work that can hold I have the capacity to hold the deepest and darkest with them. And so, usually I start off with a session, I'm just like, what's bringing you my way? And, they're reaching out to me. It's not like I'm meeting somebody on the bus or whatever. That's going to be a different conversation. Right. But yeah. And then I try to say like, hey, you might have a lot of really hard things, and I want to hear about that. I often say to clients, there's very little that makes me clutch my pearls. Okay. And what I want you to be aware of is, your nervous system just met my nervous system. And so before we go too down and deep, what I'd like to practice is some kind of resource, is some kind of nervous system regulation, so that your system has a sense of safety here, has a sense of connection here, before you just open up and tell me your whole life story, right?
Hmm.
Because that's trauma informed care, and that's really making sure that people, even if they, because some people will just come in and tell their whole story, and then they're left feeling really raw and
Mm.
exposed. So I also try to make sure I do that, try to invite that first.
Who won't you work with, Erica?
Okay, so I really have one clientele, and I will say I absolutely believe this population deserves care and deserves support. But it's just not my lane, and that is people that have perpetrated childhood sexual abuse. Um, that population is just a little too tender for me.
Hmm.
And again, I absolutely believe that they are
Yeah.
human. I believe that most of them are wounded themselves. I believe that most of them, have their own traumas that they need to work through. I still think they need to be held accountable for their actions. But that's just not my lane.
Hmm.
That's not my lane.
Because often they've incurred trauma.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, I think because I am a queer identified person and I'm pretty open about that, I usually don't work with folks that don't at least leave room for me to be a human being in that.
Ah,
Right? Like, we don't have to agree on everything. Um But if you're very much in the realm of like, gay people are going to hell, gay people are bad,
oh my.
I probably am not the best fit for
Right.
you,
Right.
really.
Why work with people with trauma? I mean, it's a lot of work. I mean, it's taxing. It seems, Erica. We need more people. I don't want to discourage, by the way, but I just why did the rewards must be incredible.
Well, I think if I were swimming around in just talk therapy, I would be burnt,
I
right?
see.
Because talk therapy is probably not going to get to the root
Ah,
of digesting, alchemizing, composting, transmuting how things are really stored. But things like EMDR, things like parts work, I also actually do ketamine assisted psychotherapy. And those things really do transmute, right?
wow.
And people are like, I set boundaries with my mother, who I've never set a boundary with, like,
Hmm.
I am leaving my abusive relationship. I am going back to nursing school, and so that you see things getting better. And really, I the thing that inspires me, the thing that I think keeps me going is this isn't just about our individual healing. The world needs us to be in our fullest expression right
Hmm.
now,
Hmm.
right? The world needs us to show up in community care. The world needs us to be here for one another. And we can't do that if we are walking around compressed, or if we're
Hmm.
walking around in a state of flight or fight or
Hmm.
freeze,
Hmm.
if we're walking around keeping ourselves small, or really organizing completely around protecting ourselves. If we're organized around protection, we can't show up in our fullest expression. And as I'm looking around the world, you know, I see so much unhealed stuff leaking out in a really, in a perpetrator kind of way, in a bullying kind of way, in a really violent kind of way. And, if people were to just get in and do the work, they might show up in the world very, very differently.
Hmm. Oh my goodness. How did you get introduced to trauma therapy?
Yeah. Well, I mean, again, I think as with most therapists, we come to this work with our own
Hmm.
stuff.
Hmm.
So, I'm adopted. And even though my adoption was very early, 7 days, my parents always told me, oh, you were chosen, whatever. I think for most adoptees, your nervous system starts off with a rupture, right? You have your birth mother's voice, her smell, whatever,
Hmm.
and then it's gone. And so your nervous system gets organized around, ooh, something happened here, right? Even though you don't remember it, your body remembers it. So there's that. And then my mom that raised me was an adult survivor of childhood sexual trauma. And she was a really, she died about 13, 12 years ago. I've lost time. But, you know, she did the best that she could. She was really, really a beautiful woman. She was highly empathic, highly overgiving, highly people pleasing. Like that was how her trauma manifested. But she also did a really good job of, you know, talking to us about our bodies, being raised in the late 70s, early 80s. She was pretty ahead of her time by like talking to us about safe touch and things like that. But, you know, I saw how her wound manifested. She was a pretty heavy drinker, not violent or gross, but, you know, had 2 or 3, 4 glasses of white wine every night. And I think that's how she was self-medicating the wound that she didn't really get to deal with. And then my birth mom, I reconnected with her when I was 19. And that was pretty hard as well, because she was an evangelical Christian and told me homosexuality was just as bad as murder and all of that stuff. So that was quite fraught as well. And then I've also had my run in with, you know, assaults and things like that. So I have some different layers of trauma in my life, and me being able to alchemize and move through some of that through EMDR, through ketamine work, through parts work, you know, it's like, I don't hate myself. Even though I consciously didn't really hate myself, I knew I wasn't a bad person. But, you know, when you have this attachment rupture, when you have sort of maybe misaligned attachment, you know, my dad is a really lovely human, but he wasn't attuned. He wasn't really present with me emotionally. He did a lot of work to try to break patterns from his dad, but, you know, we all got stuff. And so me being able to alchemize my own, I'm like, oh, I want to facilitate this for other people. And really how I got into it is like, I would be the first person that somebody told about their childhood sexual history. I'd be waiting tables and like somebody would like disclose this to me, or I'd be at a bar when I was drinking. I don't drink anymore, but I'd be at a bar and, you know, somebody would, they're like, I've never told you this. I've never told anybody this, but blah, you know, I would be the first person. And so I think there's just something about my energy, about my style that communicates that I can handle that information, that information is safe with me, that I simultaneously honor how painful something like that is. And I can also hold that that's not who you are, right? I think sometimes when people hear about childhood sexual trauma, they're like, oh, you must be broken, or, oh, I'm so sorry. You know, they get dysregulated about it. And again, I mean, I think because of my own work, I have the capacity to hold that information with both compassion and also, and this isn't who you are.
Yeah, I remember hearing about, I saw you on a couple of the podcasts, and I know a couple of people that were adopted, and yeah, I just can't appreciate it, right? I just don't know what that's like. It's got to be something. It's interesting the way you describe it, because your body can sense it.
Yeah. 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 I think a lot of adoptees experience any kind of relationship conflict as rejection, right? Because even though consciously my parents were like, she surrendered you out of love. She wanted you to have a good life. You know, we chose you out of love. There's something very old and subconscious.
Wow.
And many adoptees that I work with, they're like, there's something wrong with me. I wasn't enough. I wasn't good enough to keep.
Interesting.
Right? Even though it doesn't logically make sense. But that's not how trauma works, right? Trauma doesn't give a shit what we know.
No.
Right? And so we can know that it's, you know, we were just a baby. It wasn't anything that we did. It wasn't anything that was about us. But subconsciously, our body organizes protection around this wound of there's something wrong with me. I'm not enough. I'm not worthy. I'm not lovable. Um, and I hate to be another white lady therapist quoting Rumi, but that quote, "The wound is where the light comes in," really resonates with me, because my ability to be in that wound and to alchemize some of that has really allowed me to have this capacity for the messiness of human existence, right? For the brutality of it, but I can still hold the beauty in all of that, right? Like birth and death and loss and love, and like that's what we're here for. None of us gets out of that, right? None of
No.
us is getting out of this thing alive. None of us is getting out of this thing without experiencing loss or pain. And I don't want to do that spiritual bypassy thing, like, oh, everything happens for a reason, or that which does not kill you makes you stronger. There's wisdom in those things, but I think people jump too quickly to
Mm.
that, right? And it can be experienced as a little bit of a bypassy thing,
Mm.
like, ooh, your pain's too uncomfortable. Let me just go to the end. Everything happens for a reason. It's happening for you, for your growth. And it's a little dirtier than that. It's a little messier than that. And I believe that my adoption, that my experience with my dad, my experience with both my moms, my experience just in general as a human, alchemizing that rage, alchemizing that wound, turns that into fertile soil for new growth.
Wow.
And it's powerful.
Mm. It certainly is. Your book, Erica, Always Enough, Never Done. What do you want the reader to come away with there?
What people have said that they've come away with, which I'm so grateful
Mm.
for, is that it feels like I've taken all of these very complicated, scientific, multiple lenses things and put it in a way and put it in a place that's very digestible.
Mm.
Um, and my consistent invitation throughout the book is to engage with the material, not just from a cognitive place, from a cognitive learning, but from a heart centered place and from a body centered place. So, what
Mm.
I think is really unique about the book is that there's I think there's like 20 different somatic practices, and there's a downloadable freebie, like free resource that has links to YouTube videos of me teaching those somatic practices. And so it's really an invitation to bring in your heart, to bring in your body, which is really where trauma is stored, where grief is stored, where unprocessed wound is stored. Um, we're not going to transmute that. We're not going to change that with thinking, with
Mm.
just learning. So the book is really an invitation, and it walks people through, like, how do you prepare your nervous system? How do you do some resourcing? How do you identify your protective parts and your wounded parts? And my hope is that it democratizes a little bit of this information. Not everybody can afford $200 therapy sessions every week for 2 years or whatever. So I do think there's some preparation work that you can get yourself going with. I do believe with the trauma work, we need another person to help us
Mm.
process that. With the deep, dark, reprocessing trauma stuff, it's very, I would say, almost necessary and required to have a regulated human being on the other end of the line holding that with you.
Mm.
Right. That's why I'm not really worried about AI taking over my job, because
Ah.
AI might be able to say all the right things or give you some good language for things, but it will never have a regulated system. Like, you and I, like, you can feel me, hopefully, on the other
Yes.
end with you, right? And I
Absolutely.
feel you. I'm tracking you. You're
Mm.
nodding, your eye contact. I feel you engaged, and hopefully you feel me
Certainly.
engaged with you here, right? There's like a heart centered connection. And we need that. when we are walking through our deepest and darkest, that's the missing experience that most of us have, is somebody that can witness us, somebody that can hold it with us, that we're, only you can do it. Only you can do the work, and you can't do it alone.
Erica, can you describe a somatic practice for
Yeah.
those who?
So, it can be really anything. So throw some prints on and dance around in your kitchen,
Nice.
right? But things that are very designed to help tone what's called your vagus nerve. So your vagus nerve runs from your brainstem to your gut, and it is involved in heart regulation, digestion, sugar metabolism, calming the fight or flight response, right? So in clients with a lot of trauma, right, we see a lot of digestion issues, IBS. We see a lot of chronic pain. We see a lot of heart issues. Diabetes is higher in clients with a lot of trauma. And guess where it does not connect to? It does not connect to your thinking brain, to your frontal lobes, right? So I often say, like, you can't self-affirmation your way out of trauma. Self-affirmation is a great practice, but it's happening up here. It's happening in the top down. And so doing things that really tone your vagus nerve. So things like twisting, like letting your system take in that no sharp objects are coming your way, looking behind you. Bad shit happens from behind us, right? Tigers chase us. Bad things happen from behind us. So if we can turn around and twist and really let our bodies really take in, no sharp objects are coming. Nothing is chasing us. Take in the visual cues of safety, the sensory cues of safety, no sound, no screaming, letting our systems take in. And when I do that, I literally feel like a little release in my lower gut, or like a little bit of spaciousness happening. Pushing against the wall, that actually stimulates the vagus nerve. Actually rubbing from your forehead all the way down to your neck and down here. Sometimes just putting a hand on the back of my skull and then one on my hand and just bringing awareness to my vagus nerve is really helpful, right? Or just noticing my lower gut and seeing if I can find that anchor point, that really calm place in myself. It's almost like the ocean, right? Like there could be really big waves, a tsunami even on the surface of the ocean. But at the deepest part, it's still very calm and very still. And we all have that in us. And so the more that we can practice dropping into that anchor point, the more our vagus nerve is going to be able to stay toned and regulated. And we're really going to be able to grow our window of tolerance, grow our capacity. And that's not so that we can put up with crappy behavior, right? To stay calm in all situations. It's so that we can have the capacity to identify what's happening, digest what needs to be digested, and then stay in our creative thinking of how do we solve this? How do we get creative about partnering with people and neutralizing the tension between us so that we can actually create the world that we both want to see, right?
Erica, has there been anything in recent history, last month or so, that you changed your mind on?
Ooh, interesting question. Can I ask you the same question?
Of course.
Yeah.
You want me to
Has
answer?
there been something for you?
Yeah, there has actually. And
Okay.
we actually mentioned it. I actually, astrology, there may be something to it. I mean, the more people I talk to about it, I respect them. And these are people that I do business with, and they follow it. So I'm like, I don't know. Maybe it's just something that I should consider as another lens, as you mentioned.
Yeah. I love that. I love
And
that.
you?
I'm trying to think. I feel like the way my brain works, I see things from multiple perspectives all the time. It's like I have many tabs open in my
Hmm.
brain. So I think I can float between like understanding folks that maybe are on the other side of the political spectrum, right? Like
Mm,
I don't necessarily change my mind, but I try to jump into
mm,
curiosity
mm,
and
mm.
seeking understanding for that. Um, again, just so I can have more capacity. But nothing is coming to my, I mean, I change my mind all the time, but nothing specific is coming to mind right now.
Imagine if society adopted that, Erica, where both sides can look at at the other and say, you know, I don't, I don't agree what you say, but I can understand how you can feel that way. I don't know if we have enough of that today, or maybe we just do, but we just don't see it because we see the extremes a little bit
Sure,
too
sure.
clearly.
Yeah,
Um,
probably a little bit of that. I mean, my view on it is that we are so organized around protection collectively, right? That we are so we're really in that collectively we're in that binary thinking, right? Right, wrong, good, bad, safe, not
mm,
safe. And it's very hard for us to just sit in the discomfort and and just sit with it for a minute, right? And alchemize it a little bit and then greet the other person rather than with defensiveness or deflection or well
mm,
what about you or rage. um we're not really going in and working with it first so that we can come and turn that again that energy into what we're fighting for.
mm.
Like what are we fighting, what do we want to create, what are we fighting for rather than like what are we just fighting against. um yeah, man. But I think that more and more people are doing the work.
Mm.
I have more people in my office talking about collective trauma and ancestral trauma than I ever have
Wow.
before. And so I do have hope. I mean, it is rough out here, and I have hope, and I have belief that we might we're gonna come. Yeah, we're evolving.
Hmm.
We're continuously evolving.
Humans are simple or complex.
Both.
Mm,
Both. Yeah. I think most things that we do, all of the crazy shit humans do, all of the dangerous shit humans do, all of the annoying shit humans do, they really are trying to get one of two needs met. And the first need is our need for power,
mm,
autonomy, safety, the sense that we have some sort of self determination, some sort of control over our destiny. So there's the power bucket, or maybe both, but we're trying to also get our need for connection and
mm,
belonging.
mm,
And even if we're doing it in this really seemingly opposite way, right? Like where we're antagonizing people or we're bullying people,
mm,
like we think that that's going to give us power so that we look cool, so that we are getting our sense of belonging. And those are a layered cake, right? You can't have safety without belonging. You can't have belonging without safety. You can't have safety
mm,
without belonging. It's intertwined. And so most of the things that people are doing are trying to maybe misguidedly get those needs met. So that's the simple aspect of it.
mm, mm,
And it shows up in many, many complicated ways, right? And humans contain multitudes. We have lots of different parts that are pulling us in different directions. Um, so, yeah, I think we're both. What do you think?
Same thing.
Yeah,
Sometimes people overcomplicate things and sometimes make them too simple. But
yeah,
yeah,
right.
and I kind of see it both ways. Sometimes I hear an argument, I say, well, it's not that complicated. And then I also say, well, it's really not that simple, you know?
That's right. Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
So
Yeah.
I started my business back in the 90s. I was working way too hard, Erica, 14, 16-hour days, not paying attention to myself, and started a family and not exercising and It's terrible. So I'm in front of the doctor. She tells me I'm at 340 pounds. So I had gained all this terrible, terrible weight. And she says to me, if you don't lose this weight, you're not going to see your daughter graduate. So it scared the life out of me. Spent the next 6-7 months, lost about 130, 140 pounds, kept it off. You can't look at these things like a finishing line. These are lifelong changes.
Right.
That's
Yeah.
quite simple. It's not very complicated, is it? And when I tell people this, they always say, how'd you do it? What's your secret? And there's no secret. I just say discipline, motivation, routine, focus, etc. How does discipline play a role in your life, Erica Bonham?
Yeah, I mean, I have learned I'm a rebellious spirit by nature. So I've had a complicated relationship with discipline. um, and I have really realized that having some structure is actually freedom for me, right?
Yes.
Moving my body on the regular, having a routine that actually keeps my baseline so that I can show up as this wild woman that I am in the world. And I think where it gets messy and complicated, on the one hand, yeah, like we just have to build the habit. We just have to build the routine. It's simple. And where the complicated comes in is people get stuck in freeze. Undigested trauma is often a factor in people's struggle with food or people's struggle with discipline. I think a lot of people conflate discipline with self-punishment or self-criticism, right? They're like, I really should, or I really have to, or I've got to, rather than being in like, hey, this is a self-love thing. This is a way that I can take care of myself. Discipline isn't punishment. Discipline is learning. Discipline is much needed structure so that we can be free. And so, yeah, I mean, I'm a messy human, sometimes I am like, I don't want to work out. I don't want to sleep in. But most of the time I've built enough momentum that I get back on track. Right. Yeah, I'm still exploring. I've been booze free for 5 years. But sugar is now my new frontier,
Yes.
right? Like
Yes.
I love sugar, and
Me too.
I think it is probably a little bit of the way that I medicate a little bit. If I've had a hard day, I'm like, F it. I'm going to have
Right. Ice cream. Yeah.
a piece of chocolate. Yeah, or
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and so, like you said, it's a lifelong choosing. But if I can try to remember that it is self-love, that it is choosing, like I'm a yes for feeling good. I'm a yes for clarity. I'm a yes for moving anxiety through my body. Rather than like, you're a bad girl, you ate that ice cream, you have to work out to punish your body. Or, even around money or just staying on top of my supervisee's notes. Like discipline just isn't moving your body, but like, even our tech stuff, like that's an area that I'm still not super disciplined around. And my partner would definitely love to get me off of the phone and checking my email at 8:00 at night, But again, I'm trying to look at the root of it as like, what am I seeking? What am I reaching for? What's the urgency? Because if I don't do that, if I'm just like, you're bad, you should stop doing that, that's not really going to work for me.
Yeah. Yeah, I love what you said. When discipline isn't punishment, it's learning. There's never a wrong answer, right? I love hearing the different perspectives on it. What motivates you, Erica?
I think it's like really that big picture aspect, right? Like that I want to show up in my highest timeline, in my fullest expression, in my most badass, impactful version of myself, and to connect into this web of life and be inspired by other people, help inspire other people, to help pull this arc, to help pull the collective into a direction of love and belonging and connection and safety and care for each other. I believe that is what we really all want, even if we're organized around protection and we're like, that's not possible. You're too idealistic. Well, and I bet if you were to like get in touch with the youngest part of you, you probably had that dream too. And it was very quickly beaten out of you. And I think we would all like it if we felt a little bit more connected, a little bit more safe with each other, a little bit more joy with each other. So, yeah, I mean, on a good day, that motivates me. I'm also aware that my wounds motivate me, right? The not enough-ness, the not lovable, the unworthiness has historically been a lot more motivating for me. I got to prove it. I got to, it's from this place of anxiety or this place of scarcity. I gotta be the best in the class, or I gotta work really hard, or I gotta prove to everybody that I'm worthy or lovable. And that's less, but it's not there. Right. Yeah, I think we're all motivated to some degree by a wound. And
Failure.
the more that we can have awareness of that and try to alchemize it, then we can move from this place of inspired action, right? From this place of abundance, from this place of enoughness, rather than from this like anxiety, frenetic urgency place. Yeah, but again, that's not all the way gone for me. I'm just better at working with those parts in a little less of a mean way. Yeah.
So given the motivation of impact, of joy, of wounds, of fear of wounds, how do you measure success?
There's a couple different measurements for me. If my kids are still talking to me about what's happening for them, that's a good measurement for me. If my clients are coming and saying like, oh, I did this thing, I showed up differently, that's a good measurement for me. And it's tricky, right? Because I get conflated with like other people, outside sources versus my own lens. But that is like a measurement for me, is that outside measurement, right? And then of course I have to go in as well, is like, how am I feeling? How am I showing up? Do I feel like I am showing up in this way that doesn't feel in alignment? And if I can, at the end of the day, be like, all right, I did all right. Like I felt grounded. I felt in alignment. I felt like for the most part, I acted in alignment with my values, in alignment with my own integrity. Right. That's a good day, right? That's a good measurement of success. Yeah, I guess I'm curious for you too. What's your measurement of success?
And how often do you survey that? Mine are very similar, by the way. When my daughters are talking to me and, they're in their 20s, and that's never stopped. I hope it never does. But do you survey yourself often, or by day? I had a good day, I had a bad week, this kind of thing?
Yeah, again, I mean, I think I could, I would like to. I'm trying to use the language of like, I'm choosing to, rather than I really should take more inventory. But I'm pretty good at, not pretty good. I would say I'm pretty consistent at least checking in with myself a couple times a week. Like, what's in alignment? What's working? What's feeling okay? Where do I need to shift? What area of my life needs attention? Do I need to like put some energy and attention to my partnership? Do I need some energy and attention to my business? Do I need some energy and attention to my body? Right. And of course I get out of balance, right? Like I'm a messy human. But yeah, I mean, I think I try on my walks. I try on my, in my meditation or in my, when I'm moving my body, to just like do a little inventory.
It's healthy.
Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes when you're like, ooh, I got some areas of growth there, right? That's hard. It's not so pretty. But that's where the magic happens, right? Is starting to be honest with what's going on. What's the not so pretty stuff?
Yeah, and be humble enough to, to be able to say, hey, well, I've been slipping in this particular area, time to bring it back up. Or some people need outside sources, like when the doctor told me I wouldn't see my daughter again. That was it. That was kind of a rock bottom, but other people can just be motivated themselves. And also I find I work with a lot of business owners, and I find that they never take time to celebrate a goal, even if it's as small as just a high five, or I don't know, whatever it may be, but something as large as, vacation or something. Just take a moment to kind of reflect often does help, and let you motivate you a bit more.
Oh yeah. I mean, there's neuroscience of that. And I actually talk about that in the book as well. Is, again, trauma organized nervous systems and humans in general, we are hardwired to sort of focus on the negative, right? That evolutionarily, that was protective for us. Pay attention to the rustling in the bushes rather than how pretty the big blue sky was, right? It kept us alive. But now most of our basic needs are met. And so we're still paying attention to the negative. We're still paying attention to tracking what is going to be dangerous or what's going to get us cut off from our community, what's going to get us rejected. So if we can trick it's like hacking, few million years of evolution, like tracking what and marinating in it. Spend 30 seconds to a minute, like feeling what the victory is in your body. That actually strengthens that neurological connection and helps train your brain and train your body to have that be the norm, have that be the baseline. And it's something else that you said, like being humble enough to look at the stuff, right? Is like, there's another both and that I talk about in the book a lot, is like, you are always and already enough, lovable, worthy, and inextricably connected to every other living thing and the universe, just as you are. There's no hustling, there's no earning, there's no proving that. And we all have shadow. We all have not so pretty parts. We all have areas of growth. We all have work to do. We all have undigested wounding that probably needs some looking at, right? So I think if you're overdeveloped in self-criticism, it might be time to dip your toes into the waters of, can you find a little part of you that can tap into always and already your true nature? You're not just lovable. Your true nature is love. Your true nature is awareness, right? Your true nature is connected to every other living thing. And we're here to heal some shit, and we're here to learn. We're here to evolve. We're here to transform and grow. And we're not going to do that with just, cruise vacations and staying comfortable. Nobody comes back from a cruise and is like, that was just a life-changing experience, right? No, it's through the hard stuff. It's through the tension. It's through the yuck. It's through the down and dirty work. And if we can be humble to know that we have learning to do, that's where the magic happens.
Yeah, it certainly is. And it's important. I find it's important for me to do things that humble me often. Like I play golf, I work out. It's important to do that, because I also like to be uncomfortable. I just find it, like you say, I look for those times where I can be uncomfortable, because if you just get too uncomfortable, like being on a cruise all the time, it's just doesn't net out good for you. But that's just, I find comfort in that. I don't know if others would.
I love that. I'm inspired by that. Like, and I think, well, there's wisdom, right? Like, I don't need to go into a place where I'm unsafe just to put myself in an
Right.
uncomfortable
Right.
situation, right?
Yes. Yes.
But
Good point.
I appreciate the wisdom of embracing being uncomfortable.
Mm,
And man, the world would transform pretty quickly if people were willing to do that, if people
sure.
were willing to be uncomfortable and sit with it and learn from it. Um, us recovering perfectionists, it's hard, right? Like, we can get into
Yes.
that perfection paralysis where, like, if I think I'm going to fail, if I don't think I'm going to be good at it, if I don't think I'm going to be perfect at it, it's better not to try. Um, and that can really limit your growth and limit your expansion, limit your learning.
So like cold plunging and things like this get you uncomfortable. Another thing is that I know people. I'm not really friends with them, but I know people who take some drugs. Not casting any. I'm not questioning them at all, but I ask them why, and they say, "Well, I feel more confident." And I always say, "I don't need any more confidence. I got enough." You know?
Yeah.
So it's not that I don't do those things because they're unhealthy or whatever. I just think if that's where you're getting at it, I got enough of that. That's all right.
Interesting. Like,
Yeah.
what drugs are you talking about?
Well, look at cocaine and
Oh God.
things like this. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Illegal kind of. Yeah, yeah. I
Yeah.
know people.
That's false confidence though, too,
Yes.
right? Like, that's not true. Uh, I always like to think of courage first. Confidence is a byproduct of that, right?
Mm, mm,
Courage to be in alignment with your values, courage to look at the not so pretty parts of yourself. Then you do the things that require bravery to
interesting.
do. And confidence is a nice little icing on the cake. But if you're like forcing cocaine in your system to be confident, there's probably something underneath that feels very deeply insecure.
Yeah, anything that's going to be chemically induced is probably something to be wary of. But one thing about confidence is that you've got to be careful because it often leads to arrogance. So you've got to dance
Right.
that line. Be very
Yeah.
careful. Big
Right.
difference.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, I think healthy confidence is really, like, again, that both and
Hmm.
self-reflection, humility. How could I be doing things different? You know, am I causing harm to the people that
Mm,
I love or in
mm,
the
mm,
world?
mm.
And finding that anchor point, finding trust in yourself, finding courage in yourself, um, to act in alignment with who you really are. That to me is the magic, right? Whereas just overconfidence or bravado or arrogance, to me, that signals that there is a part of that. There's a more wounded, exiled part underneath that feels very much alone or feels very not enough or not lovable or not worthy because it's coming from a place of proving rather than from a place of
Hmm.
self trust.
Hmm. Proving versus self trust. Very interesting. Erica, I'm so glad we took this time to talk. I was excited to talk to you. I know we got mixed up on the scheduling a little bit. I'm glad we settled that. If anybody listening
Yeah.
and watching, how can they get in touch with you?
Oh, yeah. So my website is avoscounseling.com, AVOS counseling.com. You can find the book there. If you order from the website, you get a signed copy from me still. You can also find the book on Amazon, but you might as well get a signed copy from me if you want one, right? Yeah, so I work with people. I do coaching for clients on nervous system regulation, how to step into your power, how to really step into this place of congruence. So you're welcome to contact me through the website there. Yeah, you can find all my stuff on the website. Yeah, you can
Great
find me on
website.
Instagram is
Yep.
Avos Counseling.
Facebook.
Yeah, Facebook, Avos Counseling.
Yep.
I'm actually TikTok. I'm like some Erica Bonham somatic coach, I think. But
Ah,
it's everything on TikTok goes on Instagram anyway. So
anyway.
yeah.
Thanks so much for
I
your time.
occasionally pop on there and do a little video and whatever when I feel like I need to be more disciplined about that too.
Ah.
Probably.
Next time I'm in the general Western Colorado area, perhaps we'll get together and have a cup of tea.
Oh, I would love that. I would love. Where are you? You're back
I'm in
east.
Tampa.
Okay,
Yeah, I
cool.
moved here a couple years ago. Yeah.
Yeah, it was so nice to connect with you. I love your energy. I love your vibe. It's really you're a lovely human for sure.
As you are as well, Erica. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you for listening and or viewing Joey Pinz Discipline Conversations. Please share this episode with one or two of your friends who you think may benefit from the episode. Our website, www.joeypins.com. There you'll find lots of resources and you could join our mailing list. Please follow us on all our social media, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Podcast information, the video version of our podcast is on YouTube. Please subscribe. Audio is on all major podcasting platforms. Please follow them. And if you like it, please consider giving 5-star rating. Would really appreciate that. Thank you again for listening or watching Joey Pinz Discipline Conversations.